From 1878 to 1968, there were 71 lake captains that called Bayview, Wisconsin, on the shore of Lake Michigan, their home. While they lived here, they captained 195 different ships, from tugboats to schooners to steamships, in voyages that took them to every one of the Great Lakes. Join us now for another episode of Bayview, Town of Lake Captains, where we explore not only these captains, but also their ships, their homes, their families, and their lifetime of sailing adventures on the Great Lakes.
Well, hello everybody. Coming to you today from the front of the former home of Captain Herman Krones, a Bayview Lake captain. Fantastic story. This episode, as all the others, is brought to you by the Historic Bayview Lake Captain Society. Herman Krones, without a doubt, a great lake captain, spectacular history. He started out in Walker's Point. His father died when he was young, helped his mother run the saloon. Together, he and his brother and sister helped his mom keep the thing going. And they did pretty well enough that his wife, her mother, him, were able to buy several schooners while in Walker's Point. They're listed, his wife and her mother, that is, are listed in the compilation of Milwaukee's female ship owners. And I did an episode on that a little ways back if you'd like to check them out. But that's while they were in Walker's Point. One of those schooners sank when Herman was captain, and he survived. That's the first sinking. Then he moved to Bayview. After a while, decided he wanted to make a little bit of a change of pace with regard to the lakes. And he began a maritime junk business, basically, collecting all sorts of maritime parts, pieces that can be used, reused, maybe scrapped, I don't know that. And he bought a ship for the purposes of gathering this, and he sailed all over the lakes, probably mostly Lake Michigan, don't know that, but probably that, to gather his products that he was then able to turn around and sell. And he made a pretty good living at that for quite a while. But what's really interesting about that particular ship is that it sank up by the Mackinac Straits in shallow water, and in those days they raised those ships if it was shallow enough, and this one was. So he sank. He survived that sinking, which is 2. Then they raised the ship. He brings it back to Bayview, gets it all fixed up, and runs it again, sails it again, excuse me. He does that for a few years, and then it sinks. That's the 3rd sinking, and 2 sinkings on the same ship. So 3 altogether, 1's a schooner, and then 2 on his ship that he used to gather all of his maritime parts. He's the only Bayview lake captain to have survived 2 sinkings on the same ship, and he's also the only Bayview lake captain to survive 3 ship sinkings. So a great captain, wonderful history, took care of his mom when he was younger, running the saloon. There's another Bayview lake captain that did something similar, only he formed a saloon with his brother, the Krones brothers, in the early days, also in Walker's Point. But just an amazing and great history. So I hope you enjoy the episode. Simon's coming up with it right after this. So for now, hats off to our Bayview lake captains. I'll see you in the next episode. So long.
Welcome to another installment of Bayview, Town of Lake Captains, where we discuss the lives of the 71 different lake captains that once lived in Bayview, Wisconsin, during the late 19th and early 20th centuries, in the age of sail and steam. This discussion will include their ships, their homes, their families, and their lifetime of sailing adventures on the Great Lakes. Here is the map of lake captains' homes in Bayview, to show you where this episode takes place. Its location focuses primarily on the large green arrow. Today we will be discussing the life of Captain Herman Krones, who was born in Wisconsin, most likely Milwaukee. After his father, a saloon keeper in Walker's Point, died in 1880, Herman, aged 16, helped his mother continue to operate the saloon for a year before leaving to become a sailor. His mother helped him in this endeavour, using profits from the saloon to help buy 4 different schooners over the next 27 years. She and Herman were co-owners, along with Herman's wife, her mother, and his brother Frank. Herman survived the sinking of one of these schooners. These ships provided a second income for the family, to include Herman's mother in addition to the saloon. After selling these ships, Herman Krones then left Walker's Point and moved to a home on Superior Street in Bayview, where he formed a maritime junk business, purchasing a steam barge to transport the junk he found all across Lake Michigan's ports. This steam barge would sink twice when Herman Krones was aboard as its captain, once up near the Mackinac Straits and the other in southern Lake Michigan. The first sinking was in shallow water, and the ship was raised for him to sail again, and unbelievably to survive its sinking for a second time. That's right, he survived the sinking of the same ship twice. When adding in the earlier schooner sinking that he had also survived, Herman Krones is the record holder among Bayview Lake captains, as having survived not only the most ship sinkings at 3, but also the only one to have survived the sinking of the same ship twice. Captain Herman Krones was born in March 1872 in Wisconsin, most likely in Milwaukee. His father, Berthold, was born in Germany in 1849, but exactly when and where he immigrated to in the States is unknown. Herman's mother, Mary, was born in Wisconsin in 1853. Berthold is first recorded living in Milwaukee from 1871 to 74, working as a shoemaker. His son, Herman, and an older, by 1 year, brother Frank, were born during this time. A sister, Emilia, or Emily, would be born later in 1877. Then, in 1875, Berthold either bought or established a saloon at 122 Clinton Street, today 148 South First Street, since torn down, and he and the family lived above it, as was often the custom for shop owners of the day. By 1880, though possibly sooner, wife Mary was helping him, since both their occupations are listed as saloon keepers. Later that same year, 1880, 5 years after opening his and Mary's saloon on Clinton Street, Berthold Krones died. This left wife Mary alone with their 3 children, Frank, age 9, Herman, 8, and Emilia, 3. But Mary kept on operating the saloon by herself for the next 11 years, 1880 to 1891, while she simultaneously raised her children alone. When Herman turned 16, he helped his mother at the saloon for 1 year, 1888, along with his brother Frank. Frank continued to help at the saloon for 3 more years, until 1891, but Herman decided after just 1 year he wanted to try his hand, at age 17, at becoming a sailor. He may have decided upon this course after being exposed for most of his young life to the many sailors that would have undoubtedly frequented the family's Walker's Point saloon. Given the close connection Herman was to have with his mother for his entire life, it's possible Herman may have also been attempting to bring in additional money for the family beyond the saloon, but that is not known. Certainly, that's the way it worked out over the next 17 years. Herman Krones' first 2 years as a sailor, 1888 to 89, were likely spent as a crewman on a schooner, name unknown. This is because on 22nd August 1890 he became co-owner, and also captain of, the schooner Willard A. Smith, and remained so until 17th February 1891. His mother, Mary, financed the Smith's purchase with income from the tavern, and also became co-owner with Herman, along with Herman's wife Minnie and her mother Elizabeth Court, and Herman's brother Frank. The same ownership arrangement, with Herman also as captain, occurred for 3 other subsequent schooners: the Lem Higby, 1st September 1892 to 28th May 1894, though Mary sold her share to Elizabeth in October 1893; the William Aldrich, 24th September 1897 to 16th April 1914, and the Loamy A. Burton, 12th November 1910 to 17th November 1911, when it sank. Schooner ownership within the Krones family was definitely a family affair. During this same time, in 1891, Herman moved his mother Mary and brother Frank out of the saloon on Clinton Street and in with him at his new residence at 129 South Water Street. Herman also married wife Minnie on 22nd July 1893. Frank moved out on his own a couple of years later, but Mary would remain with Herman, who continued successfully as a lake captain at various Milwaukee residences in and around Walker's Point until her death, apparently sometime after 1906. After first appearing as a lake captain in 1890, Herman remained so until the probable end of the sailing season in 1920. He lived in and around Walker's Point for all of these 30 years. In addition to the aforementioned schooners, Herman Krones was also owner and captain of the schooner George W. Westcott from 1917 to 19. It was towards the end of his time captaining the George W. Westcott in late 1919 that Herman Krones, after 30 years of captaining schooners on the lakes, decided that he would go in a new direction. He would become a junk dealer. Sometime after June 1920, Herman Krones left Walker's Point and moved to 1176 South Superior Street in Bayview. He had actually started planning for his new career in 1919, when he formed the probable company for his new junk collection business, Rockfield Products Company. He hired his daughter May to handle the administrative side of the business, 1919 to 20, which was initially headquartered at his home in Walker's Point, and then, after June 1920, to Bayview at 1176 South Superior Street. But it wasn't just an ordinary junk business. No, it was a maritime junk business. The clue comes from Herman's purchase in 1921 of the steam barge Helen Taylor. It was clear he intended to use this steam barge as a means to recover and transport maritime dockyard and industrial maritime surplus materials from and to various ports around Lake Michigan. He is only shown as the owner of the Helen Taylor in 1921, but it's highly likely he was also the barge's captain. He was certainly qualified to sail it, and, after all, it was his ship, his business, and he was already an experienced lake captain. He also owned the tugboat Knight Templar for just 5 days only, in August 1924, before selling it, but it's doubtful he used it for his business, due to this short ownership duration. Herman kept on as a junk dealer through 1925, at 1176 South Superior Street, captaining his own ship and sailing it around Lake Michigan. But then, during that year, the city of Milwaukee and the Milwaukee Parks Commission and Board decided it wanted to turn the land where Herman's house stood into what is now Bayview Park, ordering all residents to move. Herman's house was in a beautiful location, overlooking Milwaukee Bay and the lake. Literally, its back porch was reported to be hanging over the edge of the lake bluff. But now he had a decision to make. Where to go? Should he find a new home? He decided to move his existing 1176 South Superior Street home to a new lot at 3288 South Illinois Avenue, still in Bayview. It wasn't technically very far, as the crow flies, but there were some turns and hills involved, and it certainly would have required a lot of effort to pull the house up off its foundation and transport it. Nevertheless, this was successfully accomplished. The next year, 1926, shows Herman and wife Minnie in their current home, but at the new address on Illinois Avenue. Herman Krones is only listed as owning the steam barge Helen Taylor in 1921. However, no other owners are listed, so it is assessed that he remained its owner and captain from that time, through the house move in 1926 and up until the end of the 1920s and the very start of 1930. He's recorded as still running his junk dealer business throughout this period of time. On 1st January 1930, the Helen Taylor foundered in the lower part of Lake Michigan, 8 miles off Michigan City, Indiana, and sank. No other details are recorded. Amazingly, it wasn't the first time Herman had gotten lucky, and survived the Helen Taylor's sinking while being aboard as its owner and captain. It had also happened 7 years earlier, in 1923, when the barge sank off St. Helena Island in shallow water just northwest of the Mackinac Straits. He raised it then, and was soon sailing it again after repairs, which wasn't unusual for the time. They never let anything go to waste back then. But this second sinking of the Helen Taylor made it 3 sinkings that Herman Krones had survived as captain, the Loamy A. Burton once, and the Helen Taylor twice. No other Bayview Lake captain survived 3 ship sinkings, let alone 2 of the same ship. It's entirely possible, though this hasn't been researched, that Captain Herman Krones may very well be the only lake captain in Wisconsin, and perhaps even the entire Great Lakes, to have survived 2 sinkings of the same ship. The second loss of the Helen Taylor, combined with his older age now, of 58, and maybe also his thinking that his incredible luck of surviving the 2 recent sinkings of the Helen Taylor might not continue for the next time, caused Herman Krones to reconsider his future. He decided to change to a job ashore, and, with the growth of automobiles and powered vehicles generally, moved into the trucking industry. This he continued to do for the next 10 years, until 1940, aged 68. After this, he disappears from history. Herman and his wife Wilhelmina, who went by Minnie, were ultimately married for 52 years, beginning in 1894. They had 2 children, the aforementioned daughter May, who helped Herman in his early days in the start-up of his maritime junk-dealing business, and a son Aldrich. Captain Herman Krones died in 1946. Minnie followed him in 1950. They are buried together at Pilgrim's Rest Cemetery in Milwaukee. Thanks for watching. This photograph isn't about Bayview or its lake captains, but it's from the same era of Great Lakes maritime history. We thought we'd close with it for enjoyment, as it captures the spirit of the era. If you'd like to read more details about Captain Herman Krones, as well as the sources for the information contained in today's video, you can find these and more in the book Bayview, Town of Lake Captains, for sale now, by individual volumes on both Amazon.com and HenschelHouseBooks.com. All proceeds from book sales go to support various maritime history projects related to Bayview's lake captains. One of these is a plaque and marker with the captains' names and addresses on it as part of the creation of the Bayview Lake Captains Historic District, which will be the first of its kind in America. If you would like to contribute to support these projects, to include this and other markers honouring Bayview's lake captains, with 100% of all donations and contributions in all forms going to support them, please consider contributing to us through the listings found on our website under the Contribute button. Note, we are not a 501c3, so contributions are not tax-deductible. If, for some reason, we are unable to secure these markers, then all funds donated to this site will be given as a cash donation to the museum ship SS City of Milwaukee in Manistee, Michigan. This is the only surviving intact ship that was once captained by a Bayview Lake captain, and in its case was captained by at least 2, and likely 3, totaling over 20 years between them. Finally, we also have free self-guided walking tours of Bayview's 71 lake captains' homes, using only your phone. It's simple and easy. Just go to our website shown here, find the item on the menu bar at the upper left named Free Self-Guided Walking Tours, and then scroll down to find the map with instructions. Zoom in by street. When you find a captain's house you're interested in, click on it and details appear on the right, along with a link to the YouTube episode from this channel that provides the biography of the captain that lived there. You can also read about his sailing adventures while living in that particular house by going to the website menu item, Sailing Adventures. These are also included on our website blog. It's free, fun, and available anytime you're out walking. Just bring along your phone. I'm Simon Stanhope, narrator for these episodes. Join us again soon for the next chapter of Bay View, Town of Lake Captains.